The wind that swept through Red Creek carried more dust than mercy. It was the kind of wind that burned your throat and made the church bell sound like a cry for help. The town was quiet that afternoon. Too quiet for a Friday. Even the saloon's piano had gone still, its player staring out the window like he'd seen a ghost riding in. That ghost had a name once, Eli Mercer. Now, most just called him the Stranger. He rode a gray stallion that looked half dead but stubborn as sin, coat torn, hat shadowing eyes that hadn't slept in days. The leather holster on his hip told a story before he ever spoke a word, a story written in blood and gunpowder. Eli hadn't come back to Red Creek for whiskey or peace. He'd come for a name. Clayton Briggs. The man who'd taken everything from him. His land, his cattle, his brother. And the woman who'd once promised him forever. The saloon doors creaked open, and all eyes turned his way. Eli didn't need introductions. Fear handled that part for him. Men shifted in their seats. The barkeep froze mid-pour. Even the player at the piano started tapping a wrong note, hand shaking. Eli's boots hit the floorboards slow, steady. He walked to the bar, laid a silver coin down, and said, "Whiskey. Leave the bottle." The barkeep obeyed like it was a sermon. After his third pour, the silence broke. "You lookin' for trouble again, Mercer?" A voice drawled from the corner. Sheriff Tate, the only man in Red Creek who'd ever stood up to him. His badge had lost its shine, but his eyes hadn't. Eli didn't turn. He just said, "Not trouble, Sheriff. Just a man." "That's so. Which man might that be?" Eli set his glass down slow. "Clayton Briggs." You could feel the air die right then. The name was a curse in Red Creek, the kind folks whispered about in barns and never too loud near the church. Tate sighed. "You best leave that name buried, boy. He runs half this county now. Got 20 men and more money than God." "Then God should be worried," Eli said and finished his drink. Later that evening, as the sun bled behind the canyons, Eli stepped out of the saloon and into a world he didn't quite recognize anymore. Red Creek had changed. Slick new signs, soldiers passing through, the preacher's daughter grown and married off to a banker. The only thing that hadn't changed was the ache in his chest. He walked past the old general store and stopped dead in his tracks. Across the street, standing by the well, was a woman in a dark blue dress, hair the color of summer wheat, face half hidden by a bonnet. She was drawing water back turned. But Eli would have known that shape anywhere. Clara, the woman he'd once sworn to marry under a full moon, right before the war came and tore them apart. His heart kicked against his ribs like it wanted to escape. He froze. The years fell away in a heartbeat. The nights they'd spent on the ridge watching fireflies, the morning she'd promised to wait for him. But she hadn't waited. She'd married Clayton Briggs. Clara turned then, maybe feeling his stare. Her eyes met his wide, shocked, full of ghosts. The bucket slipped from her hand, crashing to the dirt, water spilling like spilled time. "Eli," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "You're supposed to be dead." "Not yet," he said. "Not till I find him." She stepped closer, voice breaking. "If you've got any sense left, you'll ride out tonight. He'll kill you if he knows you're here." "I'll kill him first. Please, Eli. Don't do this." Her plea cut deeper than any bullet ever could. He wanted to tell her he didn't come for her, that this was about justice. But lies burned slower than truth. He had come for her, too. For the ghost of the love they'd buried. A wind blew between them, lifting dust and memories. Then a shadow moved near the old stable. A figure watching. Eli turned, hand instinctively on his Colt. But whoever it was slipped into the alley, gone before the echo of boots could follow. That night, Eli found an old barn outside town and made camp by lantern light. His horse snorted, restless, sensing trouble. Eli took a crumpled letter from his coat pocket, edges burnt, ink smeared. It was the last thing his brother Sam had written before Clayton's men burned their ranch. "They're coming, Eli. Take care of Ma. I'll hold them off as long as I can. If I don't make it, find her. She's with him now. You'll know what to do." Eli folded it shut, hands trembling. "I know, Sam," he muttered to the dark. "I damn sure know." Outside, thunder rolled over the hills, the first storm Red Creek had seen in months. Somewhere out there, in a mansion built on stolen dirt, Clayton Briggs was sleeping beside the woman Eli once loved. And come sunrise, Eli Mercer would wake him with gunfire. Red Creek didn't sleep that night. The storm rolled in like a warning. Heavy clouds swallowing the moon, lightning flashing against the cliffs, turning the streets into rivers of mud. But the thunder wasn't what made folks stay awake. It was the whisper that Eli Mercer was back in town. Some said he rode with the devil. Others said he'd already buried him once. Inside the Briggs estate, a white mansion standing proud over stolen land, Clara Briggs sat by the window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. She could still see him in her mind, standing in the street like a ghost made of dust and fury. Eli Mercer, the man she'd loved before everything went wrong. Behind her, the room smelled of cigar smoke and power. Clayton Briggs, her husband, sat at his desk, counting ledgers, a gold revolver lying beside the papers. He didn't notice her trembling hands, or maybe he just didn't care. "Town's buzzin' tonight," he said, eyes still on his books. "They say a dead man rode in. Fella named Mercer. You recall him?" Clara froze, her heart climbing her throat. "I don't know. The name sounds familiar." Clayton looked up, smiling in that way that made her stomach twist. "Familiar, huh? That man used to work for me years back. Hot-headed ranch hand. His brother got himself killed trying to steal my cattle." "That's not how it happened," she whispered before she could stop herself. His chair creaked as he leaned back, eyes narrowing. "What'd you say?" She swallowed hard. "Nothing." "Good. 'Cause I don't take kindly to ghosts, Clara. Especially the kind that come diggin' up the past." He stood, walked behind her, and placed a hand on her shoulder, a hand that felt more like a shackle. "If this Mercer fella's still breathin', he won't be for long." And with that, he walked out, calling for his foreman to ready 6 men and horses. An hour later, Clara slipped out of the mansion with a lantern in one hand and fear in the other. She couldn't let it happen again. Couldn't watch another man die because of Clayton's greed. She saddled her mare quietly and rode through the rain toward the old barn by the canyon road. The mud splashed up her skirt, wind howled through her bonnet, and the night smelled of smoke and wild sage. When she reached the barn, she dismounted, heart pounding. A faint glow flickered through the cracks, a lantern. He was there. She pushed open the door. Eli spun, gun drawn, lightning flashed across his face, eyes sharp, reflex faster than breath. Then, recognition softened the edge. "Clara," he said, lowering the Colt. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to warn you," she gasped, soaked to the bone. "He knows. Clayton knows you're back." Eli set the gun down and stepped closer. Disbelief painted across his face. "You're still defending him after what he did." "I'm not defending him," she said, voice breaking. "You think I wanted this life? He made sure I had no choice. After they said you were dead, he... She stopped, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. Eli looked away, jaw tight. "He forced you." Her silence was enough of an answer. He walked to her, slow, every step heavy with years they'd lost. "You don't owe that bastard nothing anymore." "It's not that simple," she whispered. "He owns everything, the men, the sheriff, the land. If he finds me here, he'll..." "Then let him come," Eli cut in, his voice low, dangerous. "I buried one Briggs once. I can do it again." She caught his arm, desperate. "Please, Eli, don't. You can't fight him head-on. He's got a whole army." He looked down at her hand gripping his sleeve, small, trembling, still wearing the ring that wasn't his. "Maybe not tonight," he said. "But I've got something he doesn't." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose." The rain beat harder on the roof. For a moment, all that existed was the sound of thunder and the warmth between them. The kind of warmth you can't kill, even with time and betrayal. Clara's eyes shimmered in the lantern light. "Why did you come back, Eli? After all these years?" He hesitated, voice soft. "I told myself it was for Sam. For justice. But now that I see you, I'm not sure anymore." She stepped closer, breath trembling. "If you stay, he'll destroy you. Then I'll make sure he burns with me." Their faces were inches apart, lightning flashing again through the cracks. For a second, the world felt alive. Then hoofbeats echoed in the distance. Clara's head snapped toward the sound. "They're coming," she whispered. "Clayton's men." Eli blew out the lantern, grabbed his rifle. "Go home. If they find you here, you'll hang beside me. I'm not leaving you." "Damn it, Clara." He stopped himself. Her eyes told him arguing was useless. He handed her a small revolver, a .38 with a worn ivory handle. "If you won't go, then you'll need this. I've never shot anyone. You will tonight if you have to." Moments later, 6 riders thundered into the clearing, torches blazing against the rain. Eli crouched by the barn door, counting shadows. "Spread out," the lead man shouted. "Find the bastard." Clara hid behind a hay rack, trembling. Eli steadied his breath, eyes locked on the nearest man. The second the torchlight passed his face, Eli moved, one clean shot through the dark. The man dropped before he hit the ground. The others shouted, firing blindly. Bullets ripped through the barn walls, sparks flying off the metal tools. Clara screamed, ducking as wood splintered above her. Eli grabbed her wrist. "Back door now." They ran through the rain, lightning flashing over the ridge. Another shot rang out. A bullet grazed Eli's arm, spinning him to the ground. "Eli!" she cried, dropping beside him. "I'm fine," he grunted, clutching the wound. "Keep movin', Dot." They scrambled down the slope toward the creek, slipping in the mud, breath ragged. Behind them, the riders' torches looked like devils chasing ghosts. They reached the riverbank, water roaring wild from the storm. Eli turned, fired again, another rider down. The rest pulled up, shouting curses but refusing to cross the swollen current. Eli staggered against a rock, blood dripping from his sleeve. Clara tore part of her dress to wrap the wound, hands shaking. "You're bleeding bad," she said. "I've had worse." She looked into his eyes, voice breaking. "You can't win this alone." "Then don't let me be alone," he whispered. Thunder cracked above them, rolling across the hills like judgment. For the first time in years, Clara reached for his hand, and didn't pull away. The storm had washed away the line between right and wrong. What was left was only love, fury, and the promise of vengeance. And as the rain eased and the torches disappeared back toward town, Eli Mercer made himself a vow under the black sky. "By sunrise, Red Creek will remember who I am, and Clayton Briggs will wish I stayed dead." The storm broke just before dawn, leaving the world painted in silver mud and silence. The sky over Red Creek glowed pale and hollow, like the world was holding its breath. Only the drip of rain from the cottonwoods and the cry of a far-off crow dared to break it. Eli Mercer sat by the dying campfire, shoulder wrapped in torn cloth dark with blood. His gray stallion grazed nearby, ribs showing through its coat. The man and the beast shared the same tired eyes, both too stubborn to quit. Clara slept a few feet away beneath his duster, her hair tangled, her hands still clutching the small revolver he'd given her. Every now and then she twitched, whispering his name in her sleep, as if even her dreams couldn't let him go. Eli watched her for a long time. He remembered the way she used to laugh, soft, like a summer creek. Now that laugh was buried under years of fear and guilt. He wanted to believe they could dig it back up. But he knew better. When the first streak of light touched the canyon, he stood and stretched, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. The bleeding had stopped, but the wound burned like hellfire. He checked his rifle, cleaned it, loaded it. He wasn't the same reckless kid who'd ridden into gunfights for glory. Every move now was quiet, deliberate. This wasn't a duel, it was a reckoning. He walked to Clara and shook her gently. "Wake up, darlin'. We gotta move." She blinked awake, eyes clouded with confusion. Where are we going? Town. I've got work to do. Work. She frowned. You can barely stand. I don't need to stand long. Just steady. She sat up, realizing what he meant. You're going after him now? Eli nodded. First lights when the Briggs men ride out to the rail yard. Fewer guards at the house. You'll be killed. Maybe. But I aim to take the devil with me. She grabbed his arm. Let me come. He shook his head. No. You'll head east, past the ridge. There's an old preacher's cabin there. Safe place to wait. I'm not leaving you again, Eli. He looked at her then really looked. Her dress torn, face smudged with dirt, eyes fierce with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was love. Wild, dangerous love that didn't know how to quit. He sighed. You stay close, you do as I say. You hear me. She nodded. They rode toward Red Creek in silence, the horses' hooves soft against wet dirt. Smoke rose in the distance. Clayton Briggs's ranch. Even from miles away, it looked like sin made solid. White fences, wide corrals, guards pacing like wolves. By the time they reached the edge of town, the sun had risen, a dull orange ball behind drifting clouds. Red Creek was stirring. The blacksmith's hammer rang out, and the church bell tolled low and tired. But people still whispered in doorways, pointing at the stranger and the woman riding beside him. They reached the edge of Main Street. Eli stopped. You go to the livery and wait. If I'm not back by noon, you ride east and don't look back. And if you are back, then we're leavin' this town for good. Her hand brushed his arm just for a second. Then she turned the horse toward the stables. Eli watched her go, then reined his stallion around and headed straight for the Briggs Trading Company. The front door creaked as he stepped inside. The place smelled of tobacco and money. Shelves lined with ledgers, bolts of cloth, whiskey crates marked B. Behind the counter stood a man Eli knew too well. Harris, Briggs's foreman, thick-necked and mean, a scar slicing through his cheek. Well, I'll be damned, Harris said. The ghost rides in daylight. Eli didn't answer. He just laid his hand on the counter, and beside it, a silver bullet engraved with the letter S. Harris's smirk faltered. Where'd you get that? Found it near what used to be my brother. In one motion, Eli drew and fired. The shot echoed through the store, blowing the ledgers into the air like black snow. Harris crashed backward into the whiskey crates, eyes wide and still. Eli grabbed a match from the counter, struck it, and tossed it. Flames leapt instantly, licking the walls, devouring paper and wood. He stepped out as the fire roared behind him, smoke billowing into the morning sky. Clara saw the fire from the livery. Her heart froze. She jumped onto her mare and galloped down Main Street, ignoring the shouts of townsfolk. Eli! She cried, spotting him through the smoke. He turned, face streaked with soot. Go. They'll be on us in minutes. But it was already too late. Riders thundered in from both ends of the street. Clayton's men, rifles gleaming in the sun. The sheriff followed behind them, pale and trembling. Eli pushed Clara behind a wagon and fired twice, dropping 2 men. Bullets shattered glass all around them. Horses screamed. People ran for cover. Stay down, he shouted. What about you? She yelled over the gunfire. Don't worry about me. He rolled, aimed, fired again, a clean shot through the badge on Sheriff Tate's chest. The lawman fell without a sound. Eli didn't hesitate. Mercy was a language Red Creek had forgotten. They ducked behind the wagon, smoke thick and choking. Clara's hand shook around the revolver. Eli, they're flanking. He glanced around the corner. 2 men were circling from the alley. He tossed her his knife. If they get close, use it. She swallowed hard and nodded. He moved fast, disappearing into the smoke. Gunshots cracked again. 1, 2, 3. When silence returned, 2 bodies lay still in the dirt. Then, through the haze, a deep voice thundered. Enough. Clayton Briggs rode into the burning street like a king among ashes. Black coat, gold revolver, and a smile that could cut glass. Well, well, he drawled. The prodigal bastard returns. Eli stepped out, gun in hand. You took my land. My brother. My life. Clayton dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the mud. And I'll take what's left of it before noon. Their eyes locked, one full of rage, the other full of cruelty. The town held its breath. Eli's finger tightened on the trigger. Then Clara ran between them. Stop! Both of you! Clara! Eli shouted. Clayton's face twisted. Get away from him, woman! She turned on him, voice breaking. You've destroyed everything we ever had. You'll destroy me too if I let you. Clayton's smile vanished. Maybe I already did. And then the sound of a single shot. Clara gasped, staggering backward, eyes wide with disbelief. Blood blossomed against her sleeve. Clayton had fired. Meant for Eli, missed by inches. Eli's rage went cold and precise. He raised his Colt, aimed for Clayton's heart, and fired once. The bullet hit square. Clayton staggered, dropped to his knees, eyes glassy with shock. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a choke. Then he fell face-first into the mud, the devil finally paying his debt. Clara fell to her knees beside Eli, clutching her arm. You killed him. He was already dead, Eli said quietly, staring at the smoke curling above the town. Just didn't know it yet. He helped her up, holding her close as the fire devoured everything behind them. The store, the street, the life they'd both lost long ago. In the distance, church bells rang. Not for worship, for warning. Because the world of Red Creek wasn't done with them yet. Red Creek burned behind them like a dying sun. Eli Mercer and Clara Briggs rode hard through the canyon pass, smoke chasing them, the wind thick with the scent of gunpowder and ruin. The world had gone quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that brings peace, the kind that waits before something worse. Clara's arm bled through the bandage, her face pale beneath the soot. She gripped the saddle horn, barely holding on. Eli, how far can we go before they come after us? He glanced back. The town was a smear of black smoke against the horizon. Not far enough, he said. But we'll buy ourselves a few hours. The sun rose over the red cliffs, cutting through the haze. Dust swirled around them, glowing gold in the light. Eli slowed his horse to a trot and pointed ahead. There, see that ridge? There's an old mine shaft beyond it. No one goes there anymore. We'll rest, patch you up. Clara nodded weakly. You always did have a place to hide. He smiled, the first time in years. And you always found it. They reached the mine by noon, a forgotten scar in the desert, mouth gaping like the earth itself had screamed once and never closed. Inside, it was cool and dark. The air smelled of iron and ghosts. Eli built a small fire, tore a strip from his shirt, and cleaned Clara's wound. She winced but didn't cry out. You're lucky, he said. It passed clean through. Feels like it didn't, she whispered. Pain means you're still here. She looked up at him, sweat on his brow, eyes tired but burning. Do you ever stop fighting, Eli? He leaned back on his heels, staring into the fire. When you've lost everything, fight's all that's left. She shook her head. You haven't lost everything. Not yet. He met her eyes then, and something broke inside him. Years of rage, guilt, loneliness, all of it cracked like old glass. He reached out, brushed a curl from her face. I thought about you every day, he said quietly, even when I hated myself for it. Tears welled in her eyes. And I thought about you, every night beside a man I despised. They sat there, the fire flickering between them, both afraid to move closer, because they knew what came next would change everything again. By late afternoon, the wind shifted. Distant echoes carried through the canyon. Horses, maybe men calling. Clara tensed. They found us. Eli stood, grabbed his rifle. Stay low. He stepped out of the mine and climbed a rocky ledge. From there, he saw dust trails cutting through the valley. 6, maybe 7 riders. One of them carried a black flag with a gold star. Bounty hunters, he muttered. Damn vultures didn't waste time. He slid back down. We ride now. Clara hesitated. You can't fight them all. Don't plan to. They mounted up again, weaving through the canyon trails, their horses kicking dust clouds into the sunlight. But the hunters were fast. By sundown, the sound of hooves echoed too close behind. Shots cracked through the canyon. Bullets chipped rock beside them. Go, Clara! Eli shouted. Ride! She spurred her mare forward, racing ahead. Eli turned, fired twice. 2 quick flashes. One rider fell. Another swerved into the rocks. He galloped after her, heart pounding. Keep to the ridge, he yelled. They broke out onto open desert, wide and endless, the sun bleeding into the horizon. Behind them, the riders fanned out, their silhouettes black against the fire-colored sky. Eli reined his stallion around and fired again, forcing them to scatter. The gun's echo rolled across the flatlands like thunder. Clara looked back, fear and awe mixing in her eyes. They won't stop, will they? Not until they're dead, Eli said. Or I am. Night fell fast. They reached a line of mesas and found shelter beneath an overhang. The moon rose, pale and cold, turning the desert silver. Clara wrapped herself in a blanket, shivering. We can't keep running forever. Eli stared out at the stars. We don't need forever. Just enough to disappear. Disappear where? The whole territory knows your name now. He smiled faintly. Then maybe we make a new one. She moved closer to him, resting her head against his shoulder. And what would we be? Outlaws. He didn't answer. The silence between them was heavy. Not empty, just full of everything unsaid. Finally, she whispered, When you killed him, did it make you feel better? Eli's jaw tightened. No. It just made it quieter. Then why do it? He looked at her, voice low. Because some things don't deserve to live. She studied him for a long moment. And what about us? Do we? He turned away. Ask me when the sun comes up. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Eli sat awake, rifle across his knees, listening to the desert breathe. Every rustle of brush, every cry of a coyote made his hand twitch. He thought of Sam, his brother's laughter, the smell of the ranch before it burned. He thought of Clara's face that morning, lit by dawn and fear and something like forgiveness. Maybe there was still a piece of his soul left after all. Just before dawn, he saw it. Movement on the horizon. A line of riders, black against the growing light. He stood, shook Clara awake. They found us again. She blinked. Terrified. How? Doesn't matter. Saddle up. They rode before the sun cleared the ridge, hooves pounding across the flats. But the hunters were closing fast. One bullet tore through Eli's hat. Another hit his horse's flank. The stallion stumbled but kept running. Clara cried out as a shot grazed her shoulder again. They reached a narrow gorge, a path barely wide enough for one horse at a time. This way. Eli shouted. They plunged through, rock walls scraping their legs. The sound of the pursuers echoed behind them like thunder in a tunnel. At the far end, the gorge opened onto a cliff overlooking the desert valley. Below, 100 feet of air and stone. Clara's horse skidded to a stop. Eli. He turned, firing back into the shadows. No choice. The hunters appeared at the mouth of the gorge, guns blazing. One bullet hit Eli square in the side. He grunted, almost fell, but stayed in the saddle. Clara screamed his name. He looked at her, eyes dark and calm. Go, he said. Ride. I'm not leaving. Clara, go. But she didn't. Instead, she pulled her revolver, aimed past him, and fired, clean shot through the chest of the nearest hunter. The man tumbled off his horse, the rest scattering. Eli stared at her. Breathless, stunned, proud. You never missed a thing, did you? She shook her head, tears falling. Not you. He grinned weakly, blood on his lips. Guess we're both outlaws now. The wind howled over the cliffs. Below them, the desert stretched endless. Empty and waiting. Eli slumped in the saddle, vision blurring. Clara reached for him, holding him upright. Stay with me, Eli. He smiled faintly. Ain't going nowhere, darlin'. Not yet. Behind them, The riders regrouped. The chase wasn't over. But as the first light touched the rocks, Eli Mercer felt something he hadn't in years. Not peace, but purpose. If the world wanted his blood, it would have to take hers first. And he'd kill heaven itself before he let that happen. The desert at dawn looked holy and cruel all at once. The sun came crawling up over the rim of the earth, spilling light across a sea of stone and thorn. Nothing moved out there except two riders and the dust trailing behind them like smoke from a dying war. Eli Mercer leaned forward in the saddle, one hand pressed against his side. The wound burned with every heartbeat. Blood soaked through his shirt, dark and sticky. He'd been shot before, but never this deep. He didn't tell Clara. She rode beside him, silent, face drawn and pale. The wind tugged at her hair, whipping it loose from its pins. Every time she looked at him, she saw the color fading from his lips, the stubborn set of his jaw that said, "Don't ask." "Eli," she said finally, "you need to stop." He shook his head. "We stop, they find us. We ride, we live." "And when you fall off that horse?" He grinned weakly. "Then you drag me, same as always." They crested a hill, and the world opened before them, an endless basin of cracked clay and ghost grass. In the far distance, a black scar cut across the sand. The old Santa Mesa line, an abandoned railroad track that once carried silver and sin through the territory. Eli pointed. "Rails lead to an old way station. Water there may be shelter." They pushed on. By midday, heat shimmered over the land. The horses panted, hooves sinking in soft dust. Clara's lips cracked from thirst. Eli's vision blurred. When they finally saw the station, a collapsed water tower and a half-buried shack, they almost didn't believe it was real. Inside, the air was cooler. Sunlight speared through the broken roof in thin gold stripes. Clara found an old canteen, half full of stale water, and pressed it to Eli's mouth. He drank slow, then handed it back. "You first." She sat beside him, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "You should have let me take that bullet back there." He laughed softly. "You're a terrible shot." "I hit a man's heart, didn't I?" He looked at her then, eyes full of pride and sorrow. "You did. And that's the trouble." They rested until dusk. Outside, the desert glowed red, the light stretching long across the rails. Eli woke with a start, hand instinctively going for his gun. "Easy," Clara said. "Just me." "Dreams," he muttered. "Can't shake 'em. Sam keeps talkin' in my head." "What's he say?" Eli stared out the doorway. "That I turned into the thing we swore to destroy." Clara touched his cheek. "You're not him, Eli. You're still the man who built fences straight and told the truth even when it hurt." He caught her hand, held it against his skin. "Maybe that man died with my brother. Then let me help bring him back." Their moment broke when they heard the cry of a hawk. Sharp, distant. Eli froze. Signal. Within seconds, they saw dust on the horizon. Riders again. 6, maybe more. The bounty had grown faster than wildfire. Eli stood, steadying himself against the wall. "We can't outrun him." Clara's eyes darted to the rail line. "There's dynamite crates by that tower. Miners must have left them." He followed her gaze, then gave a grim smile. "You thinkin' what I'm thinkin'." "Blow the bridge," she said. He nodded once. "Buy ourselves some judgment." They worked fast. Eli limped to the tower, hauling the heavy crates, while Clara stripped the fuse cord and tied it to her lantern wick. Every breath stung from dust and blood, but neither spoke. The only sound was the hiss of wind through iron. The riders drew closer, black dots growing larger, horses kicking up fire in the setting sun. Clara looked at him. "If this goes wrong." "It won't. You always say that. And I'm still breathin', ain't I?" She smiled through her fear. "For now." Eli crouched by the tracks, laying the fuse. When he stood, he stumbled. Clara caught him. For a heartbeat they stayed that way, faces inches apart, the smell of powder and sweat between them. He whispered, "If we make it out, we head north. Montana, maybe. Fresh start. And if we don't." He kissed her forehead. Then we burned together. The riders thundered into view, led by a man in a long duster the color of night. His voice carried across the flats. Eli Mercer, the governor wants your head. Drop the gun and maybe we'll leave the lady breathin'. Eli raised his rifle instead. Tell your governor I said he can ride to hell on a short mule. The man grinned. Have it your way. Gunfire erupted. The first bullet shattered the water tower's rim. Clara lit the fuse, sparks racing along the cord like lightning snakes. She grabbed Eli's arm. Go! They ran along the tracks as bullets tore up the ground behind them. The fuse hissed faster. Then, boom! The world split open. Fire and sand leapt skyward. The tower collapsed in a roar, and half the riders vanished in smoke and screaming horses. The shockwave knocked Eli and Clara to the ground. When the dust settled, silence fell, thick and heavy. Eli pushed himself up, ears ringing. Clara lay a few feet away, dazed but alive. He crawled to her, pulled her close. You all right? She nodded, coughing. Think so. He looked back at the wreck. Flames ate the rails, smoke curling into the dying light. A few figures still moved in the haze. 2 riders left, wounded but determined. Eli grabbed his revolver. Stay here. He limped toward the smoke, every step agony. The first man rose from behind a rock, pistol shaking. Eli shot once, clean through the heart. The second came at him screaming. Eli ducked, swung his rifle but hard. The man went down, blood darkening the sand. Eli stood over him, chest heaving. Should have stayed home. Then he saw the man's badge glinting in the dirt, a marshal star. He froze. A marshal. Not just bounty trash. The law itself. Clara walked up behind him, hand over her mouth. Eli, what have you done? He stared at the badge, at the smoke, at the bodies. The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder and guilt. What I had to, he said, voice hollow. But they'll call it murder now. She looked around at the burning wreckage. They'll hunt us till the end. Then the end's what they'll get. They buried the dead at sunrise. 3 mounds of sand marked with stones. Eli stood over them, hat in hand. Sam used to say every man gets one trial, he murmured. Maybe this is mine. Clara slipped her fingers into his. If it is, I'll stand beside you. He squeezed her hand, eyes on the endless desert. Then let's ride, Mrs. Mercer. She blinked, startled. What did you just call me? He smiled faintly. Figure it's time we made it true. For the first time in days, she laughed, a small broken sound that still carried hope. They mounted their horses and turned north, toward the far mountains glowing blue in the distance. Behind them, smoke from the ruined station curled into the sky like a prayer. Neither knew how far they'd get. Only that love had finally become the same thing as survival. And somewhere far behind, another rider watched from the ridge. One last hunter who'd seen it all, already turning his horse to follow. The mountains came up like a wall at the end of the world. Their jagged peaks cut the sunrise, the stone glowing red like cooling iron. Eli and Clara rode slow beneath them, 2 dark shapes against a country that had run out of mercy. The air smelled of pine and smoke. Behind them, the law rode hard. By the 3rd day north, Eli's wound had reopened. Every jolt of the horse felt like a knife twisting under his ribs. Still he wouldn't stop. Clara begged him to rest. He only said, "We finish what we started." They camped that night beneath a cliff shaped like a devil's horn. The place was called Devil's Ridge, a name whispered by riders who never came back. Old caves cut deep into the stone. Once outlaws hid their gold here. Now it would hide them. Clara built a small fire. The wind howled down the pass, carrying the scent of rain. She sat close to him, pressing a cloth against his side. "You're burning up," she said. He smiled faintly. "Guess hell's warming a spot." "Don't say that." He looked into her eyes, pale in the firelight. "You know what happens if they catch us. They won't care why we did it." "I care," she whispered. "And I'm not letting them take you." He reached for her hand, rough fingers trembling. You already saved me once, back in Red Creek. That's enough. But she shook her head. No, Eli. Not until the story ends the way we choose. By dawn, thunder rolled across the peaks. Clouds poured over the ridge, black and heavy. They packed quickly, hiding the horses in a hollow. Down the trail below, they saw dust, riders climbing hard. 5 of them this time. The lead horse carried a tall man in a dark coat. The marshal's badge flashed even through the rain. Eli's voice was quiet. They didn't stop. Guess the price on our heads makes men brave. Clara chambered a bullet, eyes cold. Then let's see how brave they stay. They took cover among the rocks. Rain slicked their hands, soaked their clothes. Lightning forked above, showing the whole pass in one blinding instant. The law closing in, rifles ready. Eli leaned close. When they hit the narrow, we strike. Aim for the lead horse. She nodded. You trust me. Till the world stops turning. The thunder cracked again, and the riders entered the choke point. Eli fired first. His shot dropped the lead horse. The marshal tumbled into the mud. Clara's gun spoke right after. Clean, sharp. 2 more men fell before they even found cover. Then the ridge exploded in noise. Bullets sparked off stone, echoing like church bells. Eli felt one tear through his sleeve, another ricochet by his ear. He reloaded with shaking hands. Clara crawled beside him, jaw set, eyes wild. You hurt. She shouted. Only my pride. Another flash of lightning, and he saw the marshal crawling for his rifle. Eli sighted down the barrel and fired. The gun clicked empty. The next heartbeat was pure silence. Then a voice. Don't do it, Mercer. The marshal stood now, revolver leveled. His hat was gone, his hair plastered to his face. Throw down the gun, he barked. You killed good men. There's no running from that. Eli rose slowly, empty weapon in hand. Maybe not, but I ain't dying on my knees. The marshal's eyes narrowed. You could have been one of us once. Maybe I was, Eli said, before the law forgot what right meant. For a moment neither moved. The rain hissed between them. Then the marshal's finger tightened. A single shot cracked through the storm. The marshal staggered. Clara's bullet hit him clean in the shoulder. He dropped his gun, fell to one knee. Eli lunged forward, grabbing Clara's wrist. Enough. He's done. She was breathing hard, eyes shining with tears. They'd never stop Eli. I know, he said softly. But if we keep killin', we're just them. He stepped toward the fallen marshal, took the man's pistol and tossed it aside. Ride home, Eli said. Tell him we're ghosts now. That's better than corpses. The marshal looked up at him through the rain. You'll die out here. Eli smiled faintly. So will you someday. Difference is I made peace with mine. By evening the storm cleared. The ridge bled gold under the sinking sun. Clara wrapped Eli's arm and led him to the edge where the whole valley spread out, endless green after days of desert. That's Montana, he murmured. Can almost smell the grass. She leaned against him, quiet. What now? He thought a long time. We ride till the past stops followin'. Maybe find a little town that don't ask names. She laughed softly. Sounds like a fairy tale. In the West, he said, even fairy tales carry scars. They stood there until the light faded, the wind tugging at their coats, the world finally still. That night, under the stars, Eli dreamed of his brother, Sam smiling from a porch that never existed. When he woke, Clara was curled against him, her hand resting where the wound had been. The pain was dull now, almost gone. For the first time in years, he felt calm. He whispered, Guess we made it through judgment. Clara stirred. Half asleep. Maybe we just changed the jury. He chuckled, low and rough. You always did have the last word. Someone's got to keep you honest, she murmured. At sunrise they saddled the horses. The world was clean after rain. The mountains shone like polished stone. Eli looked back once at the ridge, smoke still curling from the fight. Then he turned north. "Ready?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Always." They rode side by side into the new light. Two figures fading into mist, names already turning into legend. Behind them, the wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the tale down the valleys, across the empty towns, through every saloon and campfire. Eli Mercer and the woman of Red Creek. The outlaw lovers who fought the law, defied death, and vanished into the wild country. Some said they made it to Montana. Some said the desert took them both. But every drifter swore the same thing. On quiet nights, when the wind howls through Devil's Ridge, you can still hear a woman's laugh and a cowboy's voice saying, "Ride on, Clara. Ride on."